The SCO Summit in Samarkand showed that Russia's Asian friends, in particular India and China, may have had enough of the global uncertainty caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Locked in a confrontation with the West, Putin has repeatedly said Russia is not isolated. This is mainly because it can look eastwards to major Asian powers such as China and India. Both countries have provided Putin relief at the United Nations by abstaining from votes critical of Russia's aggression. But at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit, concerns spilled out into the open. On the first day of the summit, Russian President Vladimir Putin began talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping by acknowledging Beijing's apprehensions.
We highly value the balanced position of our Chinese friends when it comes to the Ukraine crisis. We understand your questions and concerns about this. During today's meeting, we will of course explain our position.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi minced no words about his feelings about the war and directly assailed Putin in public over the nearly 7-month-long conflict in Ukraine.
एक्सेलेंसी, मैं जानता हूं कि आज का युग युद्ध का है नहीं, और हमने फोन पर भी कई बार आपसे इस विषय में बात की है कि डेमोक्रेसी और डिप्लोमेसी और डायलॉग, ये सारी बातें ऐसी हैं कि जो दुनिया को एक स्पर्श करती है। आने वाले दिनों में शांति के रास्ते पर हम कैसे बढ़ सके, उसके विषय में जरूर आज हमें चर्चा करने का मौका मिलेगा।
The US took note of the comments by both nations. The White House said that Putin was isolating himself from the international community. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that what both India and China had conveyed is reflective of the concerns around the world. Putin responded to India's concerns, saying Moscow was doing everything it could to end the conflict.
I know your stance on the conflict in Ukraine. I know about the concerns that you voice constantly. We will do everything for it to stop as soon as possible. Unfortunately, the leadership of the opposing side, Ukraine, has stated that they refuse to hold talks and they want to reach their goals militarily, or as they say, on the battlefield.
Both statements showed Russia trying to ease the fears of the Asian giants. However, Putin later said that Russia had no intention to change its plans.
We are not fighting with the whole army. We are fighting with only a part of the Russian army, only the contract part. Naturally, this is due to certain parameters of personnel and so on. Therefore, we are not in a rush here. But by and large, there are no changes.
Putin may be changing colors depending on his audience, but economic concerns may cause him to heed the words of Beijing and New Delhi. Currently, Russia and China enjoy the best relations the two countries have seen since the 1950s. Selling oil and gas to Europe was the main source of Russian foreign currency earnings. Now, Putin is selling more to China, the world's largest energy consumer. China is Russia's largest buyer of oil. Beijing imported 17% more Russian crude between April and July than it did in the same period a year ago. China is also Moscow's top trading partner. In 2021, the trade turnover between the two reached $140 billion. In 2022 so far, the trade has been equal to $93 billion. Now, data shows a 30% rise in trade so far this year. India's contributions to Russian coffers has increased too. In June, Russia became India's second largest crude oil supplier after Iraq. Russia's share in India's oil imports bucket rose from 1% in February before the Ukraine war to 18% by June of 2022. Now, according to one of Putin's aides, trade turnover between India and Russia has soared nearly 120% so far this year. In March of this year, combined oil imports by China and India from Russia overtook those from the 27 EU member states by volume. However, decades of infrastructural investment in Europe mean that Russia can barely get its oil to China fast enough to meet the demand. Now, the newly announced pipeline from Russia to China through Mongolia will take years to become functional. Moscow's understanding of the challenge was reflected when on Friday Putin urged Europe to open the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Considering these figures, Moscow may unintentionally be trading dependencies on Europe for dependencies on Asia. This may tie Putin's hands and force him to wind up the war in Ukraine, even if there's no rush, as he claims. Now, for more on this, we were earlier joined by Colonel David Desroches from San Diego, who is a professor at National Defense University. Listen in.
I think when Putin initially invaded Ukraine, many analysts, and I was included among this, thought that he would achieve most of his policy goals within about 3 weeks. Fortunately, that is not the case, and I'm kind of relieved to say I was incorrect on that. What's happened is, as Ukraine has fought very effectively to defend their sovereignty, is we've seen that the Russian war has led to spikes that will reverberate around the world. So we have energy issues. India is now importing a lot of Russian oil because they sell it at a discount of about 30%. But the rest of the oil that India has to buy is become extremely expensive because India is now competing with Europe for the rest of the global oil supply since they embargo Russian oil. Fertilizer and food have also spiked because a lot of the Ukrainian grain and Ukrainian fertilizer, and they're major producers in both of those, it simply can't reach the market. Russia has either destroyed it, impounded it, or made it impossible to move to market. So countries like India are now, as the war goes on to its 7th month, they're going to see crises and spikes in food, in fuel. It has the potential to destabilize economies all around the world. And both Chairman Xi and President Modi's remarks, I think, reflected the unease at the political instability that's going to cause from that.
WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.